Section 2.8 Strings. In this video, I will talk about what is a string. I will talk about strings in the C language. I will talk about single versus double quotation marks. And finally, I will talk about the end of line character. So what is a string? A string is simply a sequence of characters. As an example, hello, my name is Haider and I am 42 years old is a string that's made up of a sequence of characters. In the C language, there is no variable type dedicated to strings. Instead, in C, we represent a string as an array of characters. Now let's do an example. Let's declare an array of 20 characters and let's call it my_name. Then assign your first name to the array. And finally, display the contents of that array on the screen. Now please open the file example-2-8-1.c in code blocks. When you open the file, this is the code that you will see. On line 5, we declare the array myName and we give it a size of 20, and then we use the equal sign to assign my first name, Haider, to that array. Then, on line 6, I use the printf statement to print the contents of my name, the array myName, on the screen. So now let's compile and run the code. So I'm going to come to the build button right here. I'm going to check my build log, and I have 0 errors and 0 warnings, so that's good. Now I'm going to go back and I'm going to run the code. And we get this window and it says my name is Haider. Keep this file open in code blocks as we will come back to it a couple of more times during this video. Let's go back to our slides. Let's talk about single versus double quotation marks. In the previous example, when we wanted to assign my first name, Haider, to the array myName, we used double quotation marks to indicate that we are storing a string in that array. Now on the other hand, if we wanted to assign a single character to a car variable, then we have to use single quotation marks. For example, if I wanted to add my last initial to the array myName, then I have to consider the following. MyName is an array of characters. So if I wanted to add a single character to one of its elements, it's as if I'm adding a single character to a car variable, which means I have to use single quotation marks. Let's now go back to our example in code blocks. On lines 8 and 9, we have code that's been commented out. Please remove the double slashes from those lines. So that's line 8, that's line 9. Now, if I wanted to add, or if I wanted to display my name as Haider space capital A, then I have to store the letter A in the 8th element of the array myName. That's because Haider has 6 characters and they would be stored in the first 6 elements. The 7th element would contain an empty space and the 8th element would contain a capital A. Now since indexing an array starts with 0, then the 8th element would actually have an index of 7. In other words, the capital H in my name, Haider, would have an index of 0, and my last initial, the capital A, would have an index of 7. That's why we use the index 7 between the square brackets, and then we assign the capital A to that element. Then on line 9, we are using the printf statement to print that element, element 8, which has an index of 7. Let's compile and run this code. So we're going to come to the build button, build, check our log, 0 errors, 0 warnings, and let's run. And it says my name is Haider, my last initial is A. Let's go back to the slides. And the last thing I want to talk about for this video is the end of line character. The C compiler adds a null character to the end of each string. It does that to indicate that we have come to the end of that string. The null character is represented by the \0. Now let's go back to our example in code blocks. I had mentioned previously that the 7th element of the array my name will be a space. Well, I kinda lied to you. What really happened is that when we added the string Haider to the array my name, the compiler added the null character to the 7th element of that array. Then we added my last initial to the 8th element of that array. Let me demonstrate. Please uncomment the printf statement on line 11. Right here. Now please notice that this printf statement is the same as the printf statement on line 6. So now we would expect that the contents of my name would be Haider space A, because we added the letter A on line 8. So now let's compile and run and see what we get. So we build, all is good. Let's run. So this is what we get. I will move this window down. So the first line says, my name is Haider, and this comes from the printf statement on line 6. The second line says, my last initial is A, and this comes from the printf statement on line 9. And the last line says, my name is Haider, without the capital A. And this comes from the printf statement on line 11. Now, this printf statement comes after we have added the letter A. So why isn't it displayed here? What actually happens is that printf encounters the null character in the 7th position, or in the 7th element of that array. And so it stops printing any more characters. That's because it thinks that it got to the end of that string. Now let's try something else. Let's comment out lines 8 to 11. So we're going to use /* star, and we will add star /. And now let's uncomment lines 13 to 16. And now let's compile and run. So we do build, all is good. Let's run. So now what we have is my name is Haider, just as before, and it comes from this printf statement on line 6. And then we have my last initial is A, and this comes from this printf statement on line 15. And then finally, we have my name is Haider A, and it comes from this printf statement on line 16. So why is it different this time? Why is it printing the whole thing? That's because I replaced the null character in the 7th element with a space. And so now the printf statement does not encounter the null character and continues printing. Let's go back to our slides. We've come to the end of this video, and one last thing to mention is that C has a library called strings, and it has a full set of functions to deal with manipulating strings. We will cover a lot of those functions in chapter 4. Next is section 2.9, pointers.